Perfect. Welcome everyone to our Fierce Friday, October 20th, 2023. And we are talking all about heavy metals. You are joined today by me, Taz Pereira, Naiva Flory, who is in Hawaii, Shari, who's in Montreal, Quebec, and Carmela Velarde, who moved to Texas but is not on today's call. So today we're going to be talking about discover the vitality of heavy metal through your journey, right? And are you ready to experience the transformation power of natural detoxification? So that's really important. We're talking about a natural detoxification. But before we get into the subject of today's call, we always want to talk to you about something that's happening in the news, something that we saw that's alarming to us. And, we want to bring it to our community and let them know, maybe this is something that you should be paying attention to. So I'll pass it to, is it Shari doing our in the news?
Yes, it is. Thanks, Tess. Okay, so let's see if I can get this going. I'm going to share my screen. So our first in the news piece, where'd that go? All right, okay. So our first in the news piece is actually called In the News. How appropriate, right? And it's in the news, heavy metals in our food. So while baby food launched public concerns around heavy metals, more testing shows heavy metals in various food products. So I don't know if you happen to have noticed over the last little while in the news, on the news, or in your social media feeds, there were some headlines that were going by, mostly about heavy metals such as lead and cadmium being found in chocolate. There was even a Hershey's lawsuit over a claim of heavy metals in their dark chocolate. There was also, there was also 5 brands, including Trader Joe's, whose dark chocolate tested high for lead and cadmium. And there was a study found that spices, second, had the amount of heavy metals in it, specifically lead, that were found only second to the amount of lead found in paint. And they were looking at this primarily for lead poisoning of children. So these are some of the headlines that we've seen go by in the news. Now, while these headlines are very alarming, it's important that we look at overexposure and exposure to these contaminants, right? So this article really gets into details, really starts to break it all down. So what types of contaminants exist? So there are 3 categories of contaminants. The first one being natural, and that's primarily plants, fungi, insects, bacteria, viruses, naturally occurring metals, and more. The second category is human-made. So those are our famous pesticides that we're always talking about, unwanted byproducts like acrylamides, naturally formed when cooking, and pollutants such as brominated biphenyls, PCBs in certain fish. The third category is human-introduced natural contaminants. These are metals or other elements like arsenic, an ingredient farmers regularly used as a natural pesticide in apple orchards decades ago, but can still be found in some soils and can make their way into our food and water sources. So, how do contaminants generally make their way into our food and water system? Good question, right? Well, there are several ways. So first, in nature from the environment, also from farming methods, during processing on an industrial scale, during food distributions, and on our plates at home or in a restaurant. How do heavy metals get into our food? Well, see, this is really interesting. While many articles focus on arsenic, lead, cadmium, and mercury, other heavy metals found in soil can have adverse health impacts if consumed in insufficient quantities, such as zinc and copper. Often heavy metals are found naturally in the soil, air, and water where plants grow. So that would go to explain how certain fruits and vegetables and grains can and do absorb the heavy metals during their growing process. And why do they absorb these heavy metals? Well, crops grow in soil, right? So they utilize carbon from the air, and they also consume the water to thrive. And if we're finding heavy metals in all of those different areas, it goes to say that our crops are absorbing a lot of these heavy metals. And unfortunately, Unfortunately, oh, lost my space there. So we're finding these heavy metals in our crops because they're absorbing them right through the air, through the water. Some crops are more prone to absorbing specific metals than other plants. For example, and this is really interesting, rice naturally absorbs more arsenic. Lettuce and onions can accumulate lead more readily, and spinach and carrots accumulate cadmium. It doesn't mean that all fruits and vegetables and grains are harmful. I'm really happy that the article does speak to this, because we don't want people to now be fearful of having fruits, vegetables, grains, right? These are some of the most health diet lifestyle options available to us. But we do, of course, want people to be aware so that they can know how to start evaluating the risk. So how do food and beverages manufacturers ensure these contaminants aren't in our product? I'm going to start again. How do food and beverage manufacturers ensure these contaminants aren't in our products at harmful levels? So we have to look, and this was very interesting to me as well, because so first we have to realize that the percentages in the proper context help us understand the situation, but they can also cause confusion, right? So when we're looking at percentages of heavy metals in our food, the percentage in and of itself doesn't really explain whether this is a risk or not. So to truly know that, we really have to dive a little bit deeper. For instance, if a product usually contains zinc at 3 parts per billion, and a new batch of that product contains zinc at 4 parts per billion, it's a 33% increase, or 133% from the standard. So this percentage all of a sudden seems very alarming, right? Very large. However, we have to look at the bigger picture, which is that this is really an increase of 1 part per billion, which is not a risk. See, while billion sounds like a really big number, it's 1 part per billion of 1. So that is where it gets tricky, and that's where we really need to start understanding the differences. So if a contaminant like a heavy metal is found, does that automatically make the consumable harmful? This is, of course, where us as conscious consumers, and as we're starting to empower ourselves in being healthier and making healthier choices, it's really important that we don't lose sight of the big picture, right? We need all of the information. So we can't just rely on one part. We really have to do a little bit of research, because we have to also realize that technology has come a long way. And our technology today is much more defined and much more specific. So technology today can detect hundreds to thousands of contaminants at harmless, minuscule levels. Researchers are learning more about the application of non-targeted analysis and how they can apply it to our food system. So something that's important for us to note is that detecting a contaminant or heavy metal does not mean in and of itself that it's necessarily harmful. We need more information. We must always consider the contaminant, the amount, and the duration of the exposure before we can determine if something will cause an adverse health effect. Does the government regulate contaminants like heavy metals found in food and beverages? So this is a good question. So we have the United States Food and Drug Administration, which is the FDA. We have the EPA, which is the Environmental Protection Agency, and we have the USDA, which is the Department of Agriculture. These are the 3 areas that regulate these heavy metals. However, while they do have strict guidelines regarding allowable limits in or on foods and water, their system lacks robust guidance on many heavy metals in final food products. This is so important because, we so often when we're going to the grocery store, we're buying final food products, right? And so this is where it becomes imperative that we know just how much heavy metals is actually in there. And of course, you don't find that in our labels. So I love that the article concludes with, does this mean heavy metals are safe to consume? And the answer is no. The article is not advocating for the consumption of heavy metals at harmful levels. However, they do agree that it's important to share all of the facts so that you can more accurately consider the risks. And this is exactly why we do our Zoom calls. And this is exactly why we're discussing this topic today, because it's really important that we unpack this and that each of you are then able to determine and consider all of the risks with heavy metals. So this was the first article. Let's see if I can pull up the second one. I have this bar that never seems to want to move. Hold on. Again, bear with me. Okay, there we go. Okay, you guys see that? Second one. Okay, so in this article has a lot of the same information. So at the risk of sounding repetitive, I'm not going to go over the whole thing. We will, of course, supply you guys with the link so that you can take a look at these articles in full. But this one also speaks of the heavy metals in food, and there were two specific parts that I really wanted to highlight here. So the first one is where they highlight fish. Okay, and fish is one of the products most affected. Just minimize my screen here. Okay. So fish is one of the products most affected by heavy metal contamination because heavy metals are bioaccumulative in the food chain. When heavy metals accumulate in waters, fish ingest them through their diet and accumulate them over the course of their lives. This means that by the time that fish arrives on your plate at a restaurant or in your home, it has years worth of heavy metal accumulation in it. Doesn't that change the way you look at that fish? Oh my goodness. The heavy metals then reach the consumer, of course, when that fish is consumed. So the other part that I thought was very interesting. So, okay, one of the main dangers of heavy metals is especially severe because they are not chemically or biologically degradable. Okay, that's one of the biggest dangers, the fact that they're not chemically or biologically degradable, which means that once released into the environment, principally due to industrial or mining activities, they can remain there for hundreds of years, polluting the soil and accumulating in plants and organic tissues. And of course, what are we doing? We're breathing this in, right? So moreover, their concentration in living beings increases as they move up the food chain. So this is all really worth the read. And then it goes into all of the main heavy metals that we should be aware of, which I know Tess is going to touch on, so I won't go into that. But we will put the links in the comments so that you guys can take a deeper look at these articles. Back to you, Tess.
What great articles. I mean, just what you were talking about, what I was hearing about the spices. Okay, that's one thing I hear so many times. People are telling me that I'm avoiding heavy metals. They're looking at their foods, they're looking at the labels, they're checking it once, they're checking it twice, but they fail to look at the spices. I have so many people that, you know, something simple as turmeric. They would use some any like Oriental grocery store and they would buy it in bagfuls. And they're like, well, I don't understand. Why are my levels still so high? Well, you need to look at everything in your spice cabinet because we don't really know where these products are being sourced, right? The soil, like what Sharia was talking about, the soil is contaminated. And what happens is that it really goes through the plants, it goes through the tissues, it stays there. This is not getting detoxified by itself. We don't live in a world like that anymore. We live in a high toxic world. Yes, organic spices are the choice to go, right? 100%. But a lot of times, like people go to those stores and they buy those bags, those huge bags of turmeric or like sumac or like, you know, any spice that is your go-to. So just pay attention, look for organic ingredients. If they have a heavy metal testing, that would be great. I know that's harder to find. That's why I'm so proud at Purium. We have, is it a 5-tier testing of all of our, from our metals to our glyphosate to every single thing. And absolutely, Dan, be a conscious consumer. You always investigate what you're putting into your body. And I love what you were talking about with the rice and the arsenic. We hear this all the time, that people are like, pay attention to your rice. It's high in arsenic. Well, you know what else is high in arsenic? Inorganic chicken. Okay, I have so many people who they want to make a healthier choice. And if they want to eat lean meats, they're like, okay, we're going to have chicken. But if you're eating chicken that's not organic, you are actually putting a higher amount of arsenic into your body. And fish, how many times do we know people who they're like, well, I'm pescatarian, I'm super healthy, I'm avoiding all the inflammatory foods, but I am having fish, right? We all know so many people who have done that. I mean, I used to live that way as well. But the more we know, the more we understand is that fish has so much metals. And like what Sherry was saying, it's stored in their tissues and it gets passed down. How interesting is that? So it's not only one generation of that fish. And how many fish, gets reproduced? There's schools of fish. So I mean, it is passed on from generation to generation. And what happens? Bioaccumulation. So we are in the perfect topic talking about detoxification. What does it mean and what can we do? Okay, I'm going to share my screen. And you guys, when I do that, I don't see anyone. So just let me know if you see me. So what is today's topic? We're talking about fulvic zeolite and chlorella, which are the two most important things to detoxify heavy metals. So let's just talk about what is zeolite. Okay, zeolite is a special type of mineral that is formed from volcanic rock. It has a unique structure with lots of tiny holes and channels, and these holes and channels can trap onto certain molecules like water or gases, right? Because you can get the heavy metals in the water and the gases, which is environmental. So let's think of zeolite like a sponge. And as a sponge, it can soak up water. Zeolite can soak up certain molecules. But unlike a sponge, zeolite can also release the trapped molecules when the conditions change, right? The zeolite is used in many different ways. And one common way are water filters. The tiny holes in zeolite can trap impurities and contaminants in water, making it cleaner and safer to drink. And zeolite is also used in laundry detergent to help remove stains and odor from clothes. Another super interesting way that zeolite, I believe, actually started was, okay, can you guys write me a one in the chat if you have an idea what it could be. I didn't know this at the beginning, but when I found out, I was like, absolutely, that makes sense. It's cat litter. The tiny holes in zeolite can absorb and trap the smell in the cat urine. So keeping the litter boxes smelling fresh, right? Isn't that interesting? So zeolite is a special mineral that can trap and hold onto certain molecules like water and impurities. And it's used in various products to clean things, to make things more pleasant. And what I found really interesting is that this Swedish geologist, Axel, who discovered nickel, coined the term zeolite because it means boiling stone. Isn't that so interesting? My slides are gone. Is that so interesting? Boiling stone, which this term refers to over 200 different minerals and all kinds of interesting uses, from water softener to cat litter to animal foods and industrial catalysts. So let's talk about the properties about zeolite. So I wanted to introduce Dr. Yue. We were talking before the call and she had a great explanation about this. Yue, can you unmute yourself and maybe go this a bit?
Yeah, well, I love your visual here. It's very much what I was mentioning to you of my understanding it before, is zeolite as well as the fulvic acids, they're naturally occurring and they have this natural lattice structure. And especially this product is fulvic and zeolite, which is wonderful. And the naturally occurring minerals are a large family and they have different specific lattice structures that fit like a lock and key with different specific toxins. And so another part of the way they work is the electronic charge. So you see here the negative charges, and a lot of the heavy metals and other toxins have a positive charge, like lead and mercury being some of the common ones, are 2+ positive charge. And so when you get a matchup of the charges, that's another way that they stick together. And then these lattices kind of contain them, as Naiva has described, like little cages, and lets them draw safely out of the body.
Beautiful. I love your explanation. And you know what? Having those charges, this is what allows the zeolite to be able to pull it out, right? Would you like to explain this one?
Let's see. Let me glance through first. Yep, the zeolite is like a sponge. It sucks up those toxins. and the absorption, the ionic exchange. Yep. And then let's see, ammonia is the primary odor producer in the pet urine, as you're mentioning, the cat litter, and zeolite can bind this up through, as we we're mentioning, the magnetism and that sponge action. And then let's see, it neutralizes the ammonia and grabs the hydrogen atoms. That has to do again with those electron charges, and then leaving behind nitrogen. So it's exchanging some of its natural particles. See on the right here, because of its negative negative charge, it attracts the positively charged compounds, just like we were talking about. I love that we are repeating, because this science stuff, like the first time I hear it, it kind of, washes over. So I'm glad that we are saying this a couple times in different ways. I hope this is useful for folks. So yeah, there's that magnet, that charge grabbing, in this case, the pet urine, but in the case of our body, so many of the different toxins, and then leaving the nitrogen. There you go.
I love it. Thank you. So here I'm just explaining how it's linked, right? Through alumina and silica, exactly what Unity mentioned. That's why I show the diagram, because it really explains what's happening here. What you need to think about when you think of zeolite is it's a magnet. It's acting as a magnet to be pulling all the heavy metals out. So let's talk a little bit about fulvic acids. So fulvic acids are natural substances. They're found in the soil. They're found in plants and even in the body of water. And they are formed when organic matter, like plants and animals, break down over time. So let's talk about chelation, right? Chelating is a process where a substance binds to another, forming a complex, in this case, heavy metals, and chelation helps remove them from our bodies. So heavy metals are like lead, mercury, arsenic, everything Sherry mentioned at the beginning. And what happens is that they get stored in our body, and they can come from pollution, they can come from environmental toxins, water, and food. And fulvic acids have a special ability to chelate heavy metals. And when we consume fulvic acids, they can bind to the heavy metals in our body and form a complex. And this complex is easily excreted from our bodies through our urine and feces, helping to remove the heavy metals. So fulvic acids are naturally occurring substances that bind to heavy metals and to help our bodies help remove them. And think of them like what we were talking about, the zeolite. They grab onto heavy metals and they're being removed from our body. Okay. Unity, do you have anything to add to this?
Oh, that sounds really good. I'm with you.
Perfect. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about chlorella. Chlorella chelates heavy metals as well. But what is chlorella, right? We hear it. We hear the spirulina, we hear the chlorella. But chlorella is a little different. So it's a single cell green algae that has a unique ability to bind to heavy metals and aid in the removal from our bodies, right? So we have the zeolite, we have the fulvic acids, and we have the chlorella. And using all of them synergistically, we are really giving our body a chance. And we are helping accelerate this process from removing it from our tissues. So when we consume chlorella, it contains a certain compound it's a bioactive molecule, such as a protein and peptide, that has a metal binding property. And these molecules have a specific site that they can attract and bind to heavy metals, such as lead, mercury, and cadmium. So it helps remove heavy metals. Okay, I wanted to introduce another guest. Let me not share. I wanted to introduce Melanie Hunter, who is a nutritional consultant and a breathwork practitioner. I love everything you do and everything you share, and I know you are a wealth of knowledge. And when we were talking about this topic, I knew we had to have you on and to share a little bit of your insight. So please tell us your insight about heavy metals.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for having me. Appreciate you, Taz. So I'm going to back up just a little bit. I started using Purium's products probably like 8 months ago. Taz introduced me to them maybe a year ago, and it took me a little while to onboard. And I started with the Ultimate Lifestyle Transformation, and I was already living a really healthy life, right? I'm a holistic nutrition consultant, and I was still actually really amazed with my results using Purium. I mean, my stomach issues that I've had since my early 20s basically resolved, and I had blood work done, and the physician who was reviewing it asked me if I was eating more vegetables, which I eat a ton of vegetables as it is, but because of that, they could actually tell that my markers had changed, which was really amazing. But it's really an amazing company. I love that it's organic and so clean and so delicious. And yeah, so as far as heavy metals go, I think, the fact is, like you guys both said, we live in a toxic world, right? And I personally, try not to make myself crazy with, you can't avoid all of it. And so I really try not to stress myself out by it. And it can be super overwhelming. And I have 3 boys, and, keeping them healthy is so important to me. And so, I love that these are products that you can incorporate into your lifestyle fairly easy. For my boys, it's like anything that I can hide in a small shot of juice is amazing, right? And so, they are 100% exposed just like I am. And, like you guys mentioned, it's in our soil, it's in our air, it's our water, it's, as a woman, it's also in the cosmetics that we use, it's in our personal care products. We're getting exposure from heavy metals in so many different ways. And really it comes down to toxic load, right? And so because we are so bombarded, our bodies are constantly trying to detox from all of these assaults, and really it's hard to keep up. So I am a big believer in what I consider everyday detox, and that's really how do we incorporate ways to help support our body's detoxification in everyday ways, right? And so that has to fit into your lifestyle and has to be easy. And so the fulvic zeolite is amazing because it's combining 2 amazing products in one, which I love, love, love. And it has a minimal taste. And so you can really kind of get it in there with your kiddos, which is awesome. Chlorella is different. I haven't gotten that into my children yet, but personally, I actually like it. So I can chew on those whenever I want to. And I think my body craves them, and I think they're amazing. But it's a daily commitment really to helping support your body, because the toxins in our environment aren't going anywhere. They just continue to get worse. And so really it's a dedication to making daily changes and incorporating these things into your lifestyle so that you can help support your body through the detoxification.
So Melanie, you're being quite modest because you are ultimately the queen of detoxification. If you guys follow her, you'll see she's always having some form to get her lymphatic system moving, whether it's saunas or jumping in the most freezing cold bath or something, right? And I know you have this a level of awareness, like fulvic acids, you can find this in like shilajit, right? But who has that? You can't have little kids to have this. And with our fulvic zeolite, this is safe for our kids. This is safe for us to take on a daily basis.
Totally. Yeah, no, it's huge. And you're right. I do a ton of things, and it's things that I've incorporated into my daily lifestyle, right? Using sauna, I do ice baths, I do lymphatic massages, I have tools that I use at home to help my lymph move. I use a rebounder. I use these I use Purium's products, which I think are amazing. Biomedic, which I can usually get into my kiddos as well. But yeah, I think that that can be overwhelming for people. So I don't want to scare anybody off, right? It's a long journey. And I do these things because I feel really good when I do them. And so it's just, been a process through years and years of learning and making changes and incorporating these things into my lifestyle, right? And so I think, if you're starting out on your journey, I don't want that to scare you, but I think, Purium's products are a really great place to start your healing journey, because they are really delicious and they're really clean, and it's something that you can use without having to, break down you can spend all day looking at every ingredient and researching it, but you don't have to. to, because it's a product that you can trust, which is really amazing. Because, I was looking at the heavy metals in dark chocolate, and we talked about this, but the crazy thing is the organic dark chocolates really were not any better. They were super high in cadmium. And these are products that I was giving to my children and, eating regularly, multiple times a week, I would have a square of dark chocolate. And you think, am I going to stop and never give my kids dark chocolate again? Like, no, personally, I'm not. I really believe in balance, but I do want to counter that. And so I am going to stick them in the sauna every once in a while. And I'm going to, sneak some drops of zeolite into their drinks. And, we do what we can. And I think, it's like I said, it's really just a daily commitment to your health. And that's, the biggest investment we can make.
I love what you're saying about this is a journey, right? So, it doesn't matter where you are in your life, just start implementing these small steps, because there's only so much that we can do. And if we can just, you have a piece of dark chocolate, maybe you can have pop in some chlorella at the same time. Why not? We're taking care of our bodies, yet we're trying to be the most conscious consumers as well. I love that. And I love how conscious you are and how you're spreading this gift of health to so many people. So, and now that we start paying attention to our kids, thank you so much, Melanie. When we're paying attention to our kids, now I have so many people as adults, they are sharing stories and testimonials of how they are now and how they could have benefited as a child. So I have a testimonial of this one woman, Chantal, who has an incredible story. So I wanted to play, she couldn't be here today, but I wanted to play her video and have her share a little bit about her story. And this story is really to show you, if we can pay attention to what was happening to our kids at a younger age, we can avoid these things happening when they're older. But even if you're older, you can always reverse anything. Start implementing these tips. Okay. Just let me know if you see my screen. There we go.
Hi everyone, and thank you, Taz, for asking me to share today. I wanted to talk about my experience as an autistic person with ADHD, or otherwise known as a neurodivergent person. So neurodivergent people are very much predisposed to toxin buildup, more so than others. And that can cause a lot of things like brain fog, sensitivities in our nervous system, which causes us to be more overstimulated, problems focusing, social anxiety, depression, things that we can all be suffering with from time to time, regardless of who we are. But when you're a neurodivergent person, you're definitely more predisposed to these symptoms. So I wanted to talk about how the fulvic zeolite and the cracked cell chlorella have really helped me in my life to minimize these symptoms and allow me to function more productively. And so the cracked cell chlorella and the zeolite are toxin binders, which help you to flush toxins through your system and out, as opposed to hanging on to them. This is really good for neurodivergent people, anyone with heavy metal toxicity, and anyone who is losing a lot of weight, because when you build up fat cells in your body, the toxins like to store themselves there, and it's sort of like a protection mechanism from your body that's trying to help you not have to process all of these toxins. So they go into the fat cells and they lay dormant there for a while until you start to lose weight. And when that happens, your fat cells release the toxins back into your bloodstream, and you want to be sure that you're helping those toxins release and be eliminated from your system. And that's why you want to be using toxin binders in that instance. Also, just, whether you're autistic or not autistic, or ADHD or not ADHD, we all have the potential to become overloaded with toxins. It's just that neurodivergent people have a tendency to hang on to them a little bit more than other people. So these products will help you to flush those things out of your system, and they're going to help you to just keep yourself clean. clean from toxins, clean from pathogens, clean from heavy metals, anything that's going to mess you up. So I would say it's a really important thing to add to your ultimate lifestyle transformation. If you have a lot of weight to lose, if you're having brain fog, if you find that you're overstimulated, if you find that your nervous system is a little bit overloaded, if you're having anxiety, depression, just these kinds of symptoms that can be related to toxin overload or pathogen overload. I think these things could be really helpful for you. At this point, I've been taking them for a little over a year at least, and I don't have any more social anxiety. I don't have any more anxiety at all. I don't have any more depression. I don't have any, well, I still get a little bit overstimulated sometimes, but my reaction to it is much healthier. I'm less reactive to the overstimulation. I can say yes when people invite me to do things and go places. I can take more on. I can accomplish more. I'm more productive. Just in general, my life is easier. And I think that the Kretzel chlorella and the fulvic acid, the fulvic zeolite, on top of my lifestyle transformation, which is a regular part of my daily life, I think those two products in general have helped a lot with these symptoms in particular. So I just wanted to share, and thank you for having me and listening to me, and I hope that this helps anybody who's wondering if these things can help them at all. Thank you.
So I know it got a little windy at the end, but I hope you guys were all able to hear that. And we will post these videos in our Million Mom Movement official group as well. What an incredible story. And Shari, I know you were saying you wanted to say something about it.
Well, yeah, I agree that it's such an incredible story. And what's even more incredible is her level of, is Chantel's level of awareness. Now it's not just, okay, we gave her these tools that are helping her, and, she's just kind of using them and going about her day, which would be amazing in and of itself, right? Finding solutions is what we're all about, and finding natural solutions specifically. But the fact that she is now wanting to help create that awareness, and she's got a wealth of information in terms of, what was going on within her own body when heavy metals were overloading in there, and some of the key points to highlight from what she was saying. Well, the fact that, heavy metals can actually store and kind of hold on to fat cells. Like, did everybody know that? Like, put a 1 in the comment if that was something that you just are learning for the very first time. Like, heavy metals can actually hide in our fat stores. And then, just what she was talking about in terms of pathogens, right? And how important it is to keep the body as clean as possible. And that's also what Melanie was talking about as well, right? Just finding as many modalities as we can, things that we can have, because we can't avoid these things. So many of these heavy metals are out of our control, but thankfully we have these natural modalities that really can make a difference, and not just removing heavy metals when we already have too many within our systems, but learning how to prevent the buildup. I think that's key. That's so important.
Thank you so much, Shari. And I wanted to discuss a little bit. We had one of our brand partners who was on a call the past week who started sharing an incredible story about her family. She has 4 kids. And when we heard the story, we were like, you absolutely have to be on our Fierce Friday call and share this with our community. So I'm going to let her share her story first, and then we will go in a little bit and talk about it.
I am a wife, and I have 4 kids on the spectrum of autism. And I would like to share our story, our family story, with you today. We are very committed to our children's mental health, so much so that about 2.5 years ago, we left a major city in Canada, and we moved up north so we could be closer to nature and our children could enjoy the outdoors and not have to be in amongst city living. So we move up here, and we were really happy we made this change. Our kids have more space, but our mental health, our goals, our specific goals were still not something we were able to achieve. My son, number 3, he was 9 at this time. He had never been able to sleep through the night. He was the one that had night terrors at night since he was a little boy, a little baby, and then a little toddler. And then when he was old enough to start walking over to our bed, he would come into our bed and would just sleep with my husband and I, and would have very unrestful sleep. It would also disrupt my husband and my sleep, but it was something that we had to learn to live with. Our oldest son was 18 at that time, and he was already starting to show signs of depression. My kids were just normal kids, but with autism, it also gives you a layer of tantrums, being unflexible, being rigid, maybe having explosive tantrums. So that was what our life looked like, even after we moved up into closer to being in nature. So then about 2 years ago, a trusted friend told me about this nutritional reset. And all I remember from that night was that she said, Purium has a protocol for families with autism. And so we recommend that you add crackerel and fulvic zeolite on top of the transformation. So we did. Something inside of me knew that heavy metals was something that we wanted to get rid of, but I didn't know how. I didn't even know it was possible. And so we gave it a try. This was about 2 years ago now. And a few things happened that were very interesting. My son, who had never slept through the night, our son number 3, for day 3, day 4, he slept through the night. He was, and it stayed consistent like that to the point where one day he woke up and said, Mom, I slept through the night. Are you proud of me? That's when I realized that he had noticed that it was something that was affecting the quality of life of us as a whole family. And he felt very happy when he realized that he had contributed towards, having a good night's sleep. About 6 months after we had started the program, my little sons were assessed by the speech pathologist, our annual checkup. And she said, Michelle, your son, number 3, has gone up 2 reading levels in reading and comprehension, 2 school levels. And for the first time, I saw that my son had a good future ahead of him, because something that's very important with any children, of course, is core academic competencies like reading, math. He went up also about 2 levels in math. And he started getting a confidence in himself that he had never had before. He had been homeschooled since he was a little boy. And so him feeling so competent and capable was something that completely improved his self-esteem. My son, that was when we started, he was 18. He was about a few months into the program. He has no longer anxiety. All the 4 boys in general are more flexible, are less explosive. They're better self-regulated. The tantrums, sometimes I would think, okay, here comes the tantrum. Don't happen like they used to. They surprised me many times in situations at busy airports, at stores, places where I knew that maybe I was always braced for impact. They didn't happen anymore. So our quality of life as a family has improved very significantly and with tangible results. Another thing that has come out of this is that we realized that my husband is also on the spectrum. And this is very important because as a parent, it's very important that the parent is healthy. And up to this point, my husband was just in survival mode. Even though he was a lot happier out in nature, he was still actually crippled by anxiety. About 2 days a week, he would be in bed rocking in a fetal position because he had to figure out how to cope. He had to figure out how to self-regulate. And we were very happy as a family that now he no longer takes days off anymore in bed. He now is no longer depressed. He feels good about himself. He feels a lot more optimistic about life in general. And everything, our quality of life has improved. And I just wanted to take, to share with you something else that's interesting. I have been in the airline industry for 28 years. So I've been exposed to heavy metals, jet fuel for many, many years. I was 17 when I started in the industry. And every pregnancy, my first 2 pregnancies, I was working on the ground. And my last 2 pregnancies, I was flying. And never stopped working throughout every pregnancy till about 3 weeks before I was due, I would stop working. And so I was exposed to heavy metals. And another thing that was interesting, that every pregnancy I would get strep throat. So every pregnancy I was put on high doses of antibiotics. How did that affect us? Well, it did affect one of my children. My second son was born with a severe yeast infection. He was actually considered a septic baby. About day 3 of him being born, he was hospitalized, and that's when first time I heard the term a septic baby. It was a very dangerous situation. And after that, he was always had yeast infection after yeast infection. So he smelled like copper. It was something very prevalent. And he had this imbalance of yeast up to the point where we started this transformation. So even himself, his self-esteem has improved a lot because he no longer has an imbalance. So I just like to share exactly what we have done. We did have now we adopted a holistic approach to our nutrition. And what we've done since we started 2 years ago has been our youngest sons. We've had them on the Epigenius, the fulvic zeolite, and the crackerella and green spectrum, and the apothecary. And our oldest sons and my husband and I have been on the ultimate lifestyle transformation on all the components with the crackerella and the fulvic zeolite and green spectrum added to the mix to help us with the heavy metal. So that's our story that we'd love to share. I no longer have strep throat. I haven't had strep throat for years now, and I have never felt better. Even emotionally, being a parent, a caregiver, has also been a life-changing for me, because now I have the stamina, the emotional want to help my family even more. So I hope if any of this resonates with you, that our story can help other families see the importance of approaching it from a holistic point of view, from a nutritional point of view, and see what the results could be in your life.
What a beautiful story, right? And understanding autism and heavy metals. And heavy metals can cause autism by interfering with the normal development and function of the brain. And this substance and other toxic substances can cross the blood-brain barrier and accumulate in the brain. These toxins are stored in the tissues. So what happens is it starts disrupting the cellular process and causes oxidative stress. So I was having a conversation not too long ago with Dr. Unity, that we were talking about just this fact. So Unity, can you unmute yourself and we maybe touch a little bit about this?
Yeah, thank you, Taz. Definitely lead and mercury and some of the others are known to be a risk factor to the brain. And one very common source of mercury is from amalgam fillings. And luckily, they're not so commonly used these days. But I definitely had amalgam fillings that were removed. And the mouth is so close to the brain. And we were told that the amalgam fillings were safe, but no, the mercury does put off fumes and it can go through the sinus cavities to the brain. And then also our gums, the gum line is a very important defense barrier. And whatever led to the need for the fillings in the first place, whatever led to the cavities, the poor oral hygiene, also compromises the gum line. And then not only the bacteria, but the mercury and anything else that's going on in the mouth can access through the gum line to the bloodstream. So when you go to the dentist and you already have a cavity, you already have sensitive gums, and they're using their instruments and disturbing the gums further, there is a low level of blood bacteria, and also there can be blood heavy metals that rises with that procedure. So around the time of going to the dentist is a great time to take your fulvic zeolite. And then taking care of the mouth really well. But all of us also have a lot of lead risk from old houses, and people like myself who are old enough to be around before unleaded gasoline. We all have some lead stored in us. And like was being shared today, it can store, the body does not want it to run around in the blood. So the body says, oh, let's pack these toxins up in fat. And let's dilute the toxins by putting on more fat. And so some people are like, I'm only eating 800 calories a day. I'm exercising like crazy and my fat will not go. That's because maybe the body's protecting you from those toxins until you have the supports in place to handle that toxin release. And then also the body will store the mercury, the lead, these other heavy metals in the joints and in other inconvenient places. So when you are detoxing, when you are cleaning your gut the way the ULT does so beautifully, very, very important. If you have any history of risk factors, if you have strong symptoms, to have these supports in place, like the fulvic zeolite, like the chlorella, so that when those toxins, the body's like, yay, it's time to release them, then you can bind them safely so they can pass through and not reabsorb through the gut into other worse places like the brain.
Thank you so much, Dr. Unity. Sherry, I know you wanted to mention something as well.
Oh yeah, I was just, I listened to this story before our call today, right? When she first sent over the video, and I was very moved by it then, and I was moved by it again now, because as a holistic nutrition health coach who specializes with families, I see a lot of families dealing with autism. I have a lot of clients who have children with autism, and you know, this lady really she did such a beautiful job at just explaining, you know, like I feel like watching her, you can really get a feel for, you know, what it is to go through that on a daily basis. And for her, it's all for children, right? I mean, I can't imagine that. And so I'm just so grateful, makes me even more grateful that, you know, we have these two amazing superfood products that are helping and not just a little, are making such a huge difference here. It's just full of gratitude. That's all.
Absolutely. I mean, the more we know, the more we share, right? It's as simple as that. And let's get to our call to action with Naiva Flory. I pass it to you.
Thank you so much, Taz. Thank you to all our guests today. And what incredible testimonials. So much amazing stories. And I'm so grateful to have those stories. And before I go into the call to action, I just want to show you all this blog that we have at Purium, what you need to know about heavy metals and Purium, because I know this question is going to come up, and I want you all to rest assured that at Purium we do so much testing, and so we have certificates of analysis for so many of our products. And because we share the links that we share here on the Zoom into our Million Mom Movement official, I wanted this to be one of the links that we share with you all. So you have access to all of these certificates of analysis for each one of these products. So you can see the whole list here. And then what you need to know about metals, right? And when people ask you these questions, and if these questions come up, and so I want you to have access to these different things. As you know, the questions come up, people often want to know what our testing standards are. And as we're talking about heavy metals, I want us to have all the resources. So I wanted to make sure that you have access to this article, and we will share it with you in the Million Mom Movement official group in just a few minutes when this post gets, when the replay gets posted. But I also want to ask if Melanie, if you'd mind reading our pledge before we go into our call to action. So I'm going to pull that up for us. If you'd go ahead and read it.
Sure. Pledge. I pledge to defend the health of myself and my family. I pledge to choose organic foods that are minimally processed and free of man-made ingredients. I pledge to read labels and educate myself on all aspects of clean living. I understand that my actions today will positively impact the health and environment of future generations. I am committed to sharing this movement of many. I am the Million Mom Movement.
Thank you so much. And this is a pledge that you can find on our Million Mom Movement.info website. So if you want to print it out, share it with people, post it on your page, make a post about it, please tag us. And so for our call to action, we'd love for you to share one of your takeaways, something that stood out to you today about this presentation and heavy metals in specific, because we learned so much, where heavy metals are coming from, how they get introduced into our bodies, even in our beloved dark chocolate, like Melanie shared, and how it was in the article as well. And just share what you've learned. And that's what we're about here. We want to put all these things that we learn into action. So we want to encourage you. And as you all know, we're incentivized to do widen your reach. And so why not marry the two together and share what you've learned today and get credit for widen your reach and do all the things to help support our movement forward. And so I want to share one more thing with you all. Give me just a second. Let me pull this up. I want to share with you all. This is what I got so excited last week, and I totally forgot to share my screen and share with you all what we're doing next week. And so the other call to action that I'd love to encourage you all to do is to go to our Million Mom Movement page on Facebook. This is our Facebook page. And if you scroll down, you'll see our featured events. And so you'll see all upcoming events. This is today's event happening now. We have next week event coming up, and I'll be posting our November 1st event for our Wealth Wednesday on November 1st. So look out for that event coming up, and that's where you can find it. And so we are going to have Ghoulishly Good Health Halloween Detox for Kids, talking all about chlorella next week, really specifically talking about chlorella, how chlorella has the growth factor for kids that really is helpful for their brains, and detoxing them from anything that they might come across during the Halloween weekend. So we want to make sure that we're prepared and armed with all the things to support our children's health. And these events that are posted on Facebook, as you can see, are very underutilized. Only 3 of us said we're going. So please use these events. Say that you're going right here. Invite your team, invite your friends, share these events on your wall, share them in your stories, get them out there, copy the link and share it by message or email if that's how you want to do it. But we'd love to just encourage you to go and find these events right here on this Facebook page so you know exactly where you can see the next things that are happening. So I'd love to see more people joining that event, sharing it out. Let's fill it up. You can comment in there if you want to, tag some friends in there. There's a great, we show all the information there of what is happening for next week's event. So all the details are there. And last but not least, I want to pull up our all the ways that you can follow us and participate in our community, because each and every one of you here are a part of the Million Mom Movement. We appreciate you helping us grow this movement, because we are 1,000 people in 100 communities, each helping 10 people to adopt a healthier lifestyle and adopt a way to create financial freedom for ourselves and our families. And that's a part of health. And so if you're somebody that's brand new here, please reach back out to the person who invited you. They invited you because they love you and they want you to become part of our community. And we'd love to invite you to like, follow, and subscribe to our different channels so that you can stay updated on what's going on with the Million Mom Movement. So the page I just brought you to was the Million Mom Movement page on Facebook. Please go like that page so that way when we create a new event, it will pop up in your feed and you'll be seeing those things happening on that page. You can also join our Facebook group, highly recommended. That's where this replay will be found, as well as many past replays, and all of the links that we shared today will be shared in Million Mom Movement Official along with the replay. So that's super important. Please go into that group, invite your team into that group, invite the people that you love, that you want to be a part of our movement. That is our community group. Share your stories in there. If you see things out there in the field, in the news that you think would be important, that you want other people to know, share it in the Million Mom Movement Official. That is our community group where we are activists in this community to just empower people with solutions and let people know what we found out there. And then please follow us on Instagram at Million Mom Movement. You can use our hashtags and you can be reposted on our channel. Everything posted on Instagram. Also, all the still posts, the reels don't go across all the channels, but the still posts go onto the Facebook and the Twitter, now called X. And so if you're on X, you can also give us a follow there, and please subscribe to our YouTube channel where all of the replays are posted. You can find so many resources there. And so I just want to thank you all for joining us today. Taz, do you have any last words for us?
No, just start doing simple changes, and remember, this is a journey, and be gentle with yourself and take care of your family. Thank you everyone for being here. Thank you to our guests. Thank you, Melanie. Thank you, Dr. Unity. Thank you to our council members and all of you wonderful people for joining us. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.